Okay, so we got page 6, a nice easy one. You're going to need 3 things. From your vocab packet, you're going to need the word weathering, and then in your colored piece of paper, bright green and bright orange that says physical weathering and chemical weathering. So get those cut out. Oh, and also the vocab, you're going to need the picture of weathering. It's pretty easy to figure out which one that is. It says weathering on it, so it's that one right there. So get that stuff cut out, and then push unpause once you're ready to go. And we'll get started. So the first thing we're going to obviously do, like always, is the definition. Well, I guess it's like always. It's like most of the time. So the definition of weathering. And weathering, I don't want to say it has nothing to do with the weather, but it's kind of what weather does to things. So weathering is the breakdown. So it's breaking. The breakdown of rock into smaller pieces due to rain, wind, ice, sunlight, and plants. So where does weathering take place? Weathering takes place all over Earth's surface. Literally everywhere. There's nowhere it doesn't take place. There's nowhere that's immune from weathering. Nowhere that's safe. It's like from the coronavirus. Nobody was safe. Everybody could get it. So physical and weathering and chemical weathering. So there's 2 different types. So physical means like so it's like an action. It takes like hard work. And chemical weathering is like science, and it's sneakier. So this was probably a mountainside, and now there's a hole in it. How can you think about something that might have weathered that hole away? A rock didn't form with a whole big hole that you could see another mountain through. So think about how that describes the word weathering when you answer question number 3. Get that glued in at the top of the page like always. It is like always, but I'm about to throw you for a loop, I think, tomorrow. And you're going to need these 2 and something to underline or highlight with. Highlighting might be a little tricky because of the coloring. So we're going to start with physical weathering. So physical weathering. So physical, think like PE. What does PE stand for? Physical education. You have to do something. You have to move. So weathering alone is the breaking down of, so just remember this again. Weathering is the breaking down of rock into smaller pieces called sediments. Oh, we remember that from yesterday, from page 5. Sediments is tiny little pieces of rock junk. Okay, sweet. Physical weathering, also known as mechanical weathering, so that's like the even more sciencey sounding. So mechanical means to like do something. Occurs due to plants, gravity. Oh, we didn't include that in our definition. Plants, gravity. My marker's dying. My alarm's going off. So plants, gravity, water. So that was like rain, rivers, any kind of water, wind, and ice. When a plant's roots spread inside a rock, it weathers pieces of rock. So if you've ever been walking on a sidewalk and there's like a big crack and you look next to you and there's a tree, that's because the roots have grown like this underneath the sidewalk. And unlike paper, the cement is not flexible, but the root grows under and eventually just cracks the rock or the cement. So when rushing water in a river or the ocean passes by rock, it can weather rock over time. Water can collect in the cracks of rocks. When it freezes into ice, water expands and can break the rock. So that's how we get potholes in the winter. So the water gets into the road, and then it freezes, and it expands, and then it will either crack and break off on its own, or it cracks and is loose, and when a plow comes over, it chunks it up. So glaciers, remember we watched that about Magic School Bus, are huge blocks of ice that move extremely slowly, and they crush rocks in their path. Glaciers just destroy rocks. And wind wears away rock over time. So then we've got our next buddy, chemical weathering, which is a lot trickier to see, but it can do a lot of damage too. So chemical weathering. So we're mostly going to talk about physical weathering in class, but I want you to know that chemical weathering exists. So remember, weathering is the breaking down of rock into smaller pieces called sediment. So it's just the breaking down of it. Remember that. Weathering breaks stuff. Weathering breaks stuff. Physical weathering, also known as cool, we talked about that. Skip that. Chemical weathering, on the other hand, occurs when a chemical reaction breaks down rocks. So there's 3 types: oxidation, carbonation, and hydrolysis. And those all kind of have the name of what does it. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen. So rocks with minerals rich in iron become weaker when they're exposed to oxygen. So that's when they rust. Like rusting is a form of chemical weathering. When water mixes with carbon dioxide, an acid forms that breaks down rocks. And then we have hydrolysis. Some minerals in rock change into a weaker mineral when they're exposed to water. So hydro is kind of like, this is like you're mixing hydrogen and oxygen. So water has a lot of hydrogen in it. So you're going to take these two and you're going to glue them in underneath however you want. I think I'm going to go like this. So just get those glued in right under your word for weathering. And if you didn't trim them, they might be a little bit of a tough squeeze. So you might have to trim them before you glue them in. It looks like I have a decent amount of extra space, but you might not. So that's all you have for page 6. There should be an empty chunk at the bottom.